I think back to your question about, getting someone into therapy, back to just the general term narcissism, they do tend to go after successful, smart women because it does help with the ego, that dynamic. And, people that are, have that, successful, I'm good, that it does tend to have that stereotype of going to therapy. I should know better. I shouldn't need this. And so it can be a little bit hard to admit I need help.
Right. And what I see is that they've self-identified the abuse in the relationship, or so, a friend or family member has said, this is your problem, here, read this book. They read 10 pages in the book, they say, yeah, that's me. And they think they're on the road to recovery once they've identified it. What's so insidious about it is how it just seeps into your soul, if you will, into your core personality, and essentially changes your DNA. Okay? And coming out of that, as therapists, there are lots of ups and downs and extremes that come following that realization. What is scary to me as a divorce lawyer is I need that clear head, because we're going to make some decisions that are going to impact the rest of your life. It could be $100,000, it could be millions of dollars on the line. And how do I advise somebody who's either terribly angry, terribly sad, and the emotional response they're having is rational and reasonable? Yeah, because one of the things, especially for court, what you don't want to do is appear angry and bitter. That'll turn off any judge. Even as the lawyer, I can explain in openings that, look, my client's angry. He or she's been abused for the last 15, 18 years. She was scared to death of talking to anybody about these problems. It interfered with a relationship with her kids, this, that, and the other. He or she said he or she couldn't go back into the workforce. And so all these terrible things that have happened to my client has impacted negatively. Now, the only way I'm going to get real evidence into the record about the damage is through a mental health professional or a vocational expert. But it's still going to come off as anger and bitterness instead of, I just want to get my fair share of the net marital estate. And that can be tremendously challenging for the lawyers.
So do you offer any advice to people listening that might be in this journey, or is it just something to work on with their attorneys?
So the core advice is pretty straightforward and nothing terribly unique. Number one, get an emotional support team. Most clients, when they come in to visit with me, already have identified a friend or family member who's helping them with the journey. And most likely that person's been telling them for the last several years, you need to go see a divorce lawyer, okay? So I like to include the emotional support team in decision-making whenever we can. Now, granted, the emotional support team members are not under the attorney-client privilege, but what are the discussions we're having? Do you need to go get counseling or therapy? And we maintain, like many lawyers, we maintain a list of people that locally that they may want to go visit with. Also, if we have access to a list of mental health professionals that's available on an insurance program through their employment or their spouse's employment, we're going to call one of our trusted psychologists in the area and say, who on this list should we refer our client to? So we'll do some of that work for them. The financial support team is there to help pay the bill and make advice regarding potential settlement and help make some financial recommendations on what's fair, just, and reasonable. And sometimes that might include a certified divorce financial analyst, which is always very helpful. And then we're the legal team, okay? And so that when we break it down that way, we try to say, look, you don't want to rely on my therapy skills because I've never been trained. I'm not a big hugger, I'm not the guy you hug. I'm not the guy you invite over to your house for beverages, a glass of wine. No, nobody invites me over for that. I'm a tool, okay, and hopefully a good sense. I'm here to maximize the likelihood of a fair, just, and reasonable settlement. And then if we can't settle, represent you, be your voice in the courtroom. And a lot of times we get a lot of confusing looks from our client. And then we know, the other side of the same coin is a very popular saying, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so by our actions, not by our words, we try to show we care a tremendous amount about the details of making sure that we're doing what needs to be done to not just adequately represent, but zealously represent them. And sometimes that means, getting back to the narcissist, waiting until the narcissist makes their move on the chessboard or not for making that decision, whether to turn left or to turn right. We make recommendations, the client makes decisions.